recording all of this?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Oh, no!
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, up to
You're
the
an adult now, what are you talking about?
Yeah, not a kid anymore.
Left-handed.
How many of us are there?
I don't know.
Sure we not be centered?
Oh, they're alive? So we can just, I can read. You know?
All right, let's sit here.
Who are you?
Okay.
Jesus, no, no offense, but, you know, you'll always be a dark-haired, you know, slim-faced Floridian. The last time I saw you was at a Florida show.
Yes.
With that big redheaded lunatic in her husband. Yeah, that army reunion was going on during the show. And Nick Lowe kept encouraging her to get to create more havoc. No shit.
Yeah, it's actually correct. And you would never.
I'm not the hero initiative.
So we're going
I
to.
get a lot of people.
I made that.
I'm scared.
Oh, really? Yeah, it's going to be nice.
Terrified. Are you with the Hero Initiative? Just disconnect.
Jim reps it.
Same as
So, yeah.
Okay.
But not,
Oh, you were there too, right?
I'm not.
Is
Jim
Jim
first time in
I
19
don't think so.
so.
No, I mean, he's not good.
Yeah, he's doing well. Basketball.
I like triples.
Yeah, he's consistent.
Which was.
Well, there you go, yeah.
I'd say do it arc by arc.
Well, I mean, he was magic.
I didn't know Erwin. He's very close with Gil. What? Hi, John.
How are you? Good to see you.
You know, he was very so.
Yeah, I'm doing it. He is.
John, Klaus Janson. How are you?
America's nothing like a base. Fucked everything. Yeah, he was just like. And it was fun. And the fact is, Sheldon remembered this from the hey, it's a pivotal moment. Yeah, I know. But outnumbering you is our goal this afternoon. And by the way,
You want to come up here?
by the way, many of you should not be here at this late hour because there are better things to be doing with your life than spending the last hour of the convention day on a Friday listening to us. So take the opportunity now before we get started to book the room. Nobody's leaving.
Really not.
Nobody's leaving.
We're locked in.
All right, fine. It's on you.
We'll share.
What? What? Mics? You need a mic? I do not need a mic. I'm pre-mic'd Broadway. You know, I still project.
All right. Hello, and welcome to the Comics Noir panel for this year.
You need a mic.
I'm so used to just having one here.
Well,
We obviously totally found this. Let me. I'll come down.
Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
Okay.
Wow. All right. Hello, and welcome to the Comics Noir panel for this year's Baltimore Comic Con, or as I've been referring to it, Coats, Not Capes. My name is Greg Matiasevich. I host a podcast called Robots from Tomorrow, and I'm insanely lucky to have a panel as stacked as this one to dive into the topic of noir in comics. If we could just go down the table and introduce yourself, not that you really need to, but let's go ahead and do that anyway, and what you think your biggest noir or noir adjacent work would be. Then we can get started.
Okay, hi everyone. Thanks for coming out. My name is Shawn Martinbrough, and it is such an honor to be on this panel with so many of my just people whose work I really admire. And I'm kind of known for probably like the most noirish thing I might have done was Luke Cage Noir. So did Thief of Thieves for a number of years. I'm currently illustrating the Nazi Boys adaptation of Neil Gaiman's. It's just I grew up really being attracted to artists who use a lot of shadows and light. So definitely Howard Chaykin's one of them. Frank Miller, David Mazzucchelli, Mike Mignola. I can go down the list. So yeah.
Hi there. My name is John K Snyder III, and my noir project that I would mention here is I did an adaptation of Lawrence Block's classic novel, 8 Million Ways to Die, featuring Detective Matthew Scudder, and that was a real honor to work on, a real pleasure, and I've also been fascinated by crime fiction, comics, noir, before it was called noir, all that sort of thing, and again, it's great to be sitting on this panel with all these great artists, writers. That's all. Okay.
Hi, my name is Joelle Jones. I worked on a graphic novel, You've Killed Me, like ages ago, but I think it still counts. Batman counts, I guess. But anyway, I'm a huge fan of like the hard-boiled crime fiction. Have been for ages, wrote some papers about it, but yeah, I'm super psyched to be here.
Thanks.
My name is Klaus Janson. I love noir because I like working in black and white and the contrast and the relationship of that. I like lighting, I like shadows. I like the movies from the 40s and 50s, especially the stuff that featured Burt Lancaster and Kirk Douglas, those when they played cops and criminals and robbers and all of that stuff. I think noir for me is much more complex, and I prefer that to the vanilla kind of storytelling that most comics are.
Hey, Alex Segura. I'm a writer of novels and comics, mainly crime novels like Secret Identity, which is a murder mystery set in the comic book industry of the 70s. I have a really particular definition of noir, so I'm sure we'll get into that in some way, but now it's kind of become a marketing term, but I'm really drawn to stories of messed up people making messed up choices.
I'm Steve Epting. Like Shawn, I grew up appreciating artists that used a lot of heavy blacks in their work, and tried to emulate that as much as possible. And I guess I would be much more known for Velvet and Captain America as far as the noir stuff, which were both spy themed books during my life.
Yeah, what the fuck? My name is Howard Chaykin. I am deeply steeped in film noir and roman noir. I still regard Anthony Mann as a touchstone of my entire working experience. His work on Railroaded, T-Men, Raw Deal are pivotal. And Black Terrors, and the Black Book rather as well, are major influences on me. I would say the work that I produced in this market would probably include the reevaluation of The Shadow in the 1980s, Black Kiss, Midnight of the Soul, Marked Man, and that covers it. Alex and I had a conversation a couple of years ago about noir, and my definition of noir is people who are incapable of dealing with the problems that they're confronted with, and ending up coming to terms with the fact of that inability. And if noir has become, I'm reading a book by Mel Torme right now, who dismisses the French for their obsession with jazz because he regards it as a fad. And I think to a certain extent that's how noir has become, as Alex said, a marketing tool. It ain't just enough to use a lot of black and do superhero stories with capes. with trench coats instead of capes. It's a mindset and a sensibility in my mind.
Does this thing that we're calling noir, I mean, it came out of, I guess, the popular sort of perception of it came out of, like, obviously the post-World War II era. Does it have an expiration date for you? Like,
No, I don't think so. I think that it's a style that I think appeals to, it appeals to a particular sensibility. You know, I mean, for me, I just always found, and I've been a big fan of artists whose work is not noir. I mean, it's like artists who are very linear, that use no shadows, and, you know, and I think that I can appreciate that, but I think what always impressed me were artists that used shadow and light, and almost like an impressionist. And so if you don't draw every single line and you can kind of leave suggestion, that I think it's just more of an interesting visual. So for me, that's what's always attracted me about like artists that use shadow and light, and also it's a contrast in line. You know, like I didn't mention earlier, like Klaus Janson, grew up on Klaus's work in terms of his line, like how the hell do you get those crisp ass lines? And then he would contrast that with a heavy, thick line. And then that to me is, that's an example of the dramatic sense that you tend to get with noir type storytelling. So I don't think it will ever go out of style. It's just a technique of storytelling, a style of storytelling.
so then maybe let me try just rewording that question a little bit. Does it have, what has to be there for it to be considered like a noir type of story? Like, if it doesn't have to be set in a certain place or at a certain time or whatever, what has to be in there for you to go?
Moral
yeah.
ambiguity.
What?
Moral ambiguity.
May I just say, I agree with Howard. I realized a little while ago I was watching No Country for Old Men by the Coen brothers, and I realized, oh, that's noir.
Yeah.
Because the movie is essentially about a bunch of losers that don't realize what they're doing is entirely futile, and that's noir.
And I'm watching Industry right now, a show that I missed when it first aired. I'm almost to what's left of the third season, and this is a show that illustrates in every way, shape, and form, from my perspective, not a single person of any redeeming value. No one is there to make me feel good about rooting for their success. And I know I stand alone in this, because a lot of comic book people need to have someone they can root for in a story. And I'm not interested in identification of character. I don't give a shit about this. I'm interested in watching interesting people do interesting things to each other, for good or evil. And the Industry is a perfect example of utterly repellent, morally ambiguous people, many of them just horrible people, out to fuck each other in every simple way, shape, and form, and doing it in a really interesting way. And that really appeals to me enormously.
And tell me, Howard, I'm wrong, but there's no redemption.
None. And I mean, look, everybody, I think people like, Detour, The Devil Thumbs a Ride, are what I would consider the sort of the, not the gold standard of quality. The gold standard of quality is out of the past.
Yeah.
You know, spoiler alert, he dies at the end. And no, there is no redemption. And redemption is for people who need to have a cozy at the end, you know.
I think that's what makes noir stand out, is that you're not going to get a happy ending. The lead character is probably not a good person, and he or she's going to make bad choices. You know, I think people throw that term around so easily, like Care Bears, but noir.
I want that.
But you know what I
want
mean?
that stuffing in those little, you know.
It's become a shelving technique for marketing, and as someone who used to work in marketing, I get it. But noir is people making primal choices based out of primal emotions that they then have to backtrack because they've made a huge mistake.
And I think people often mistake hard-boiled for
Right.
noir, and they're two very different things. John mentions Lawrence Block. Block did one of my favorite late Block novels is one of the Bernie Rodenbach novels, where Bernie Rodmar is a thief who finds himself trapped in what the equivalent of an English country house over when they're snowed in, people start dying. And he's there so he can steal a first edition copy of Big Sleep signed by Raymond Chandler to Dashiell Hammett. And halfway through the novel, and it's written in a cozy style, first person, cozy. And then there's a single sentence chapter says, wait a minute, this isn't a cozy, this is a hard-boiled novel. And the rest of the novel is written in this frantically hard-boiled, brutal style. And it's a demonstration of an understanding of style in service of narrative. You know, and that really is, it killed me. It really did. So, I mean, what Shawn is talking about is the look of the material. I'm talking about how the look of the material is endowed with narrative value. You know, that the pictures themselves have to have a sense of story that informs the sort of story you're telling. For me, Kurtzman was the archetype, not Eisner, but Kurtzman was the archetype of introducing the noir sensibility, certainly in the war stories.
Well, there seems to be two definitions. It's either it's a genre, noir is a genre with certain things, or it's like a technique, a visual style.
I think it's both.
Can they exist separately?
Well, I think if it simply becomes a means of display, then I think it is simply a sort of an exercise in style. But if you
yeah, it's a noir style, but not
right.
necessarily a noir.
I mean, yeah, I mean it's having to hark back to the 1940s and do stories that are, you know, like hot babes and dangerous women and femme fatales. That's nostalgia, and nostalgia is good nostalgia. But I think you want to find a way to tell modern stories with this sensibility, because we live in a fractured, you know, post-structural world, and I think you can tell modern stories with this stuff without a constant reference of Alex Tuff. You know, you can find a way. I mean, Mobius is a noirist, and Mobius had an aversion to black.
It's so funny. I was about to mention
The Long Tomorrow.
I was about to mention Mobius as one of those artists who's just all linear. But then I was going to say that he wasn't noir, but then I had to catch myself. I'm like, no,
He is.
no, because I would.
His
just
characterization is archetypal.
Yeah,
in that
yeah,
world.
yeah.
Yeah.
I had to catch myself there. I was like, no. He was. I would attribute him to his storytelling to noir.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just because I know this is going to be kind of we have so many folks up here and it's kind of a short panel. Does anybody have any questions that they would like to make sure to, yes?
Would you consider like certain cyberpunk, like Neuromancer, a noir novel?
I've never read it. I have no idea.
Well,
That stuff came along after I stopped reading science fiction.
high tech, low life.
Anyway,
I consider The Matrix noir. I consider that
the
one.
movie?
Yeah, the movie,
Yeah.
the first one. I'd consider
Yeah.
the first one noir.
I wanted to punch that movie in the face. Because the second half of the movie, they sit there telling you shit. They don't show you shit. And it is for me such an exercise in style. And again, I was seduced by it.
The first one? The first one?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I found, I resented it because it was so manipulative. It was such a cheap manipulation technique. It was like porn in that sense. That it played all the cards aimed at identifying itself as a kind of style without having anything backing it up to support it. That movie that they made with Jennifer Tilly and George Gershon, fuck.
Okay.
Now that,
Okay.
that's a movie I never wanted to punch in the face.
Well, yeah, no, Bound is, that's a classic to me.
Now, has anybody seen Emily the Criminal?
Yeah.
Who's seen Emily? One person. What the fuck? You've seen it?
No.
Good, good.
No, you got
Emily the Criminal. Okay. You've seen it? You haven't seen it?
No.
There will be a test.
Where can I find this on streaming?
You'll find it. It's a feature I saw on Netflix.
Netflix. Okay, all right.
It's a modern film. It's Aubrey Plaza direct producing,
Okay.
starring with Leo Rossi or Theo. What is it? Theo Rossi or Leo Rossi? I always confuse the two of them. It's about a woman who's underwater with her college debt and becomes a criminal.
No,
And it's really fucking great.
okay, all
Have you
right.
seen? Has anybody on the panel seen it? Okay.
Yeah, people doing that.
That's a modern noir. And it takes
Yeah,
place in
that's-
bright sunshine. And the last 5 minutes will kill you.
Okay, all right.
I mean, noir can exist in any
Right.
kind of of setting. I mean, there's cheerleading noir. You read Megan Abbott's.
And Megan Abbott's,
She brings the elements of noir to cheerleading. She does it for gymnastics. She does it in science. And it's just...
Have you read Megan Abbott?
No.
Yeah, she's fantastic.
Unbelievable. Just, and a great comics fan too, a serious comics fan.
Okay.
Also, Greg, Ryan Johnson's high school.
I found that so twee, I couldn't stay with it. I have to get back to it, seriously. And I like Johnson's work, you know?
What about like the Wallinger novels, like the hero?
I hate the Norwegian shit. I really hate them. And this is just a personal thing. I hate them so
The
much.
Walliners are procedurals.
Yeah.
Those are police
So
procedurals.
you don't consider that noir?
I would say they're hard-boiled.
Yeah, they're
Maybe
more hard,
elements
yeah.
of noir. But
Okay.
What about Elroy?
Elroy is a separate unit.
yeah, it's his own genre.
Yeah, Elroy, I think when Elroy started threatening to murder his editors, people just let him alone, you know? I mean, when you read White Jazz, you realize that no editor was in that room at any point.
It's a whole other language.
What's that?
It's a whole other language.
Exactly, I mean, but all of us read this stuff, I think, and I'm, you know, I just reread a book I hadn't read since my 20s called The Immediate Experience by Paul Warshaw, who's a critic who died at the age of 37. He's best known for comic book people. He wrote a piece about EC, about his son's obsession with EC when he was 11, called My Son Paul, EC's, the horror comics, and Dr. Worth. And he's the first one in print who took Worth into task for his assumptions. And one of the essays in here is about his feelings about what he called gangster movies, the crime films is what he's talking about, and westerns. And his discomfort at the pleasure he takes in this work is so palpable in the writing that he feels that as an intellectual he should not enjoy this work, the pleasure that he does. And he tries to pick the work apart in such a way that it doesn't allow the work to support its own value. And there's a movie called Bye Bye Braverman where it's about these guys who were intellectuals in New York in 1966. And they're just on the cusp of identifying the work that we're talking about here as having merit and value. And I don't want to be a relativist. This work is just work of itself. But I love this stuff so much. I don't give it credibility because I love it. I love it because it has credibility for me. And you should read Megan Abbott. She is one of the best crime writers working today, and she writes in a venue that has no bearing whatsoever on crime police procedurals. She writes about women who are of her generation in conflict with each other in ways that are serpentine and really brilliant. She's a phenomenal talent, and she's 3 feet tall.
And she also doesn't over-explain. She doesn't explain it to you. You have to earn it as a reader, which to me draws me in as a reader. I don't want it spelled out for me. I want to read it and experience it and live in the space and figure it out myself. And she does that really well.
I'm just writing to read it.
2 B's.
Okay.
And Emily the Criminal.
Okay. I gotta write this stuff down. My reading pile is like this tall. I'm just a very slow reader, but I just acquire books and we'll get to them at some point. Okay, got it.
Well, speaking of you and books, what you didn't mention in your intro is that you actually wrote a book called How to Draw Noir Comics.
Oh, Jesus. You're gonna put me on the spot here with this panel? This panel?
You are fucked now.
I'm leaving.
So just talk about some of the techniques that you needed to put into that.
Really, like no pressure? Yeah, like professional. Honestly, you know what? Honestly, it just as you can see, like I'm more of a visual aesthetic when it comes to noir. You know, so the book really is just an explanation on how I will approach a scene. So over the years, I've been fortunate to work with some really great writers in comics, and it's just been very interesting when I get a script, how I can augment that script and how I can make the script as dramatic as possible, how I can make the characters act as dramatic as possible. And that's my job as an artist. And so, and now I'm a writer as well, so, which is really interesting because I get to pull that visual side of me when I'm writing. And so I think for me, it's just really an aesthetic, it's a mood. It's just a mood that I try to establish in my art and in my writing. So that was really like the basis for how to draw noir comics. And it's so funny because a lot of people had never heard of the word. They were like, noir, what does that mean? And I was like, really, you never heard the word noir before? And they're like, no, a lot of people haven't. So I would just explain to them, it's a French word, and blah blah blah. I don't know how to explain the meaning and the application of it, but yeah, that's just my sense. So like for me, like when I go to a movie or a TV show, like I'm instantly just studying the framing, the pacing, how things are arranged in a panel, the foreground, middle ground, background. It's just something that's just built into me as an artist, and then obviously like when I write, I think we mentioned it as well.
Yeah, so I guess, differentiating, crime versus noir. Noir obviously has this fatalistic, outlook to it, all of it being like about tone and mood and stuff. As, I guess, the rest of you have had to do, work that sort of captures that mood, what's your way into that? Like, is it like, okay, I need to go for this sort of angle, just, break out the India ink, just make sure you got like tons of that. Able to, just there it is. Yeah, like when you've been called on to illustrate, this type of material, what's your go-to to kind of get into that mood? Or what are you trying to evoke?
I mean, for me, it's usually like it's usually like the character dictates, right? So you just follow that character. And for me, it's the acting. So again, it's like really interesting, morally terrible people, and then through all the acting and costuming and all of that, you can impart it to the audience.
So
that
the costuming is
you know
character.
more about him as well, and that you can put that into the acting.
Well, it's interesting. To me, to kind of visually saw like when I was working on the Lawrence Block adaptation. You were asking about, you were mentioning what's the expiration date on noir, or is there one? And I don't think there is, but I think that there is something about noir where it has to be kind of a natural state, as opposed to, you'll hear somebody say, well, I want to do a noir thing, and then it's an immediate, like, let's do Venetian blind, shadows, Venetian blinds, femme fatale, cigarette. And, to get to that panel, like in a comic, to do an adaptation or something like that, to get to that panel with Venetian blinds, you're going to need about 10 pages leading up to why is the character looking out, why is the shadow coming on, what's the moment of desperation that character is feeling. It's not just, oh, this is good looking visually. It's not, you can't do like 100 pages of somebody looking out. You can, and they make movies with, it's like, look, shadows, look, a lot of black ink, but it's really got to be kind of a natural vibe. With the Lawrence Block adaptation, if you're not familiar with Block's work, his characters, with the Matthew Scudder detective character, there's not like hundreds of pages of people getting, thrown through doors or car chases. Not at all. It's a lot of quiet desperation. And there might be one or two moments of extreme violence, and it's all build-up. And I think visually there's a lot of tricks you can get into with foreground, background characters, all that sort of thing, building up that sort of tension. But it's not necessarily what you would consider to be, in my opinion, what people think of as a noir moment. It's not every single panel is not a moment of extreme drama. It's a build-up to that moment of drama. That's hard for me to kind of verbalize how to work that out, but I think it has to come natural, as opposed to somebody thinking this must be noir. It's got to come out, I think, in the desperation the character is having, and how to depict that visually, is a challenge, but it's a great challenge. But I think relying specifically on filling everything in black in every panel, like you guys were bringing up, like, noir can happen in daytime. It's a tricky thing, but it's something that I like to approach.
I collaborated with Matt Fraction on a book called Satellite Sam, which he describes as Howard Chaykin fan fiction. And to a great extent, it changed the way I thought about working in black and white. Because I did not want to go for an overtly stylized approach with, to do the Toth drop shadows and all that stuff. I wanted to do something that felt more natural. And right now, I've got a 28-page Black Kiss story that I'm working on. We're doing an English language omnibus, collecting all the material. And I'm in rough pencil at this point, and I don't have a clue of how I'm going to finish it. I don't have any idea. It takes place mostly at night. It's a Halloween story, and I don't have a really strong notion. But I'm past the point of caring. No. I'm past the point of caring of whether I'm going on to the job having a specific notion of what it's going to be finished. I'm going to allow that finish to find